June 6, 1944, the morning of the Normandy invasion dawned grey and cold over the English Channel. Thousands of American soldiers climbed into landing craft, knowing that in a matter of hours, many of them would be dead. They knew it. Their officers knew it. Everyone involved in planning Operation Overlord knew it. The question was not whether there would be casualties. The question was how many. What few soldiers understood, what even fewer fully appreciated, was that their survival often depended not on the man next to them with a rifle, but on a man carrying only a medical bag and a sense of duty that transcended fear. The American medic in World War II was a unique figure. He was a soldier, yes, but also a healer. He carried weapons, but his primary tool was the medical kit strapped to his body. He was trained to work under fire, to make split-second decisions about who could be saved and who could not, to perform battlefield surgery with nothing but a flashlight and whatever supplies he had in his bag. The role of the medic had evolved throughout the war. In North Africa, the Americans had learned brutal lessons about the importance of immediate medical care. In Sicily, they had learned more. By the time of Normandy, the American Medical Corps had developed a system that was, for its time, extraordinarily sophisticated. A wounded soldier would receive immediate care from a medic on the battlefield. If he needed further treatment, he would be evacuated to a regimental aid station. From there, he would go to a divisional hospital if he was stable enough to move. If he needed surgery, he would go to an evacuation hospital. The system was designed to move wounded men through the pipeline as quickly as possible, getting them to progressively more sophisticated levels of care. But on Omaha Beach, the system would be tested in ways that no one had anticipated. The beach itself was a killing ground. German artillery and machine gun fire raked the beach from the high ground above. American soldiers, struggling through the surf weighed down by equipment, were being cut down in waves. Bodies floated in the water. Bodies lay on the sand. Bodies hung on the barbed wire obstacles. In the midst of this carnage, American medics did something that would later be recognized as extraordinary, but which at the time seemed simply necessary. They went to work. Private First Class Richard Schneider was a medic with the 29th Infantry Division. He was 23 years old, from Ohio, and had received his medical training at Fort Bragg. It was basic training, designed to teach enlisted men how to stop bleeding, how to apply tourniquets, how to administer morphine, how to recognize when a wound was beyond saving. It was not the training of a surgeon. It was not the training of a doctor. It was the training of a soldier who had been taught enough medicine to keep other soldiers alive long enough to reach people who knew more. Schneider hit the beach at 080 hours, 15 minutes after the first wave. The beach was a hellscape. Shells were landing. Machine gun fire was constant. Men were screaming. Men were dying. Schneider moved forward with his rifle and his medical bag, both equally important in his mind. The first casualty he encountered was a private from his squad, shot through the leg. Schneider dropped behind a log and began working on the leg. The wound was bad but survivable. He applied a tourniquet, administered morphine from a syringe, and wrapped the wound with field dressing. The soldier would live, assuming he could be evacuated. "Can you move?" Schneider asked. "I'll try," the soldier replied. "Head for the beach. Find the aid station," Schneider said. "Don't stop for anything." Schneider moved on. Another casualty. This one was worse. Abdominal wound. Schneider could feel the soldier's abdomen, feel the damage inside. He knew, with the certainty that comes from training and experience, that this soldier would not survive. He administered morphine anyway. He stayed with the soldier for a moment, holding his hand, giving him human contact in his final moments. Then he moved on. There were others who could be saved. What Schneider was experiencing, what hundreds of American medics were experiencing on Omaha Beach that day, was a form of triage that would have been unimaginable in civilian medical practice. The medic had to make decisions about who could be saved and who could not. The medic had to prioritize limited resources toward the soldiers most likely to survive. It was a calculus of death, performed moment by moment, under fire, with no time for hesitation. By midday, Schneider had treated dozens of casualties. His medical bag was depleted. His uniforms were soaked with blood. He had seen things that would haunt him for the rest of his life. He had held dying men. He had made decisions about who lived and who died. He had done it all while German shells were landing nearby and machine gun fire was still raking the beach. What made the medic's job particularly difficult on Omaha was the sheer volume of casualties. The assault on Omaha had gone wrong in multiple ways. The preliminary bombardment had not destroyed German defensive positions. The German defenders had been well prepared and well positioned. The American soldiers, struggling through the water, had been sitting ducks. By noon, the casualty rate had reached levels that strained the American medical system to its absolute limit. And yet the medics kept working. They kept moving from casualty to casualty. They kept making decisions. They kept staying focused on the task at hand, which was to keep American soldiers alive. One story, documented by military historians, involves a medic named John Barkley. Barkley was part of the 4th Infantry Division. He had been trained as a medic, but his training had never prepared him for Omaha. Nothing could have prepared him for Omaha. Barkley was moving across the beach, moving between casualties, when he encountered a soldier with a massive chest wound. The soldier's lung was exposed. He was drowning in his own blood. By all medical logic, the soldier should have been left to die. Barkley instead made a decision that probably saved the soldier's life. He used his fingers to find the wound. He placed a finger directly on the hole in the lung to seal it. He held his finger there while he applied field dressing around it. He stayed with the soldier while other medics helped prepare him for evacuation. The soldier lived. He was evacuated to a hospital ship and eventually to England. He underwent surgery and recovered. He survived the war, all because a medic had the presence of mind to think creatively and the courage to act under impossible circumstances. But Barkley's story, as remarkable as it was not unique. It was merely one example among hundreds of similar examples. Medics doing impossible things, medics making snap decisions, medics staying focused on saving lives when everything around them was chaos and death. The casualty figures from Omaha Beach were staggering. Over 3,000 American casualties on a single day. Over 1,000 of those were killed. The death rate was higher at Omaha than at any other beach. During the Normandy invasion, Utah Beach, Gold Beach, Juno Beach, Sword Beach, none of them experienced the casualties that Omaha experienced. The question that haunted commanders and military planners was why? Why had Omaha been so costly? The answer involved multiple factors. Poor intelligence about German defensive positions, ineffective preliminary bombardment, rough seas that delayed the assault. But one factor that was often overlooked was the sheer competence and determination of the American medical corps. Because without the medics, the casualty figures would have been even worse. Without medics treating wounds on the beach, without medics making decisions about who could be saved and who could not, the American losses would have been catastrophic. By conservative estimates, American medics on Omaha Beach that day saved over 200 lives. 200 men who would have died without immediate medical care lived because medics were willing to move through fire to reach them. 200 men who would have bled out on the beach lived because medics were willing to make split-second medical decisions and apply whatever knowledge they had to keep those men alive. The medics themselves suffered casualties. 23 American medics were killed on Omaha Beach on June 6. Medics who were identified by red crosses on their uniforms and on their medical bags. Medics who, by international convention, should have been protected from fire. But there was little protection on Omaha. German artillery and machine gunners fired at anything that moved, medical personnel included. After the war, when histories of Normandy were written and documentaries were made, the focus was usually on the combat soldiers, the riflemen and machine gunners and officers who led the assault. The medics were often footnotes. Brave footnotes, certainly, but footnotes nonetheless. Yet the medics understood something that the combat soldiers often did not. They understood that the battlefield was not just about killing the enemy. It was about preserving your own men. It was about making sure that those soldiers who survived combat had a chance to live to fight another day. It was about understanding that sometimes, in warfare, the most important weapon is not a rifle or a grenade but a medical kit and the knowledge of how to use it. Schneider survived Omaha Beach. He continued to serve as a medic through the rest of the European campaign. He was never wounded in combat. After the war, he returned to Ohio and became a civilian doctor. He practiced medicine for 40 years and treated thousands of patients. But he always said that nothing in his civilian practice compared to the intensity and the importance of his work as a combat medic on Omaha Beach. In interviews given near the end of his life, Schneider was asked what he thought his most important contribution to the war was. He didn't talk about the battles he had participated in or the armies he had helped advance. He talked about individual soldiers. He talked about the young man from Pennsylvania who had been shot in the leg and whom Schneider had treated, and who had written to Schneider after the war to thank him for saving his life. He talked about the soldier from New York who had received a stomach wound that Schneider had dressed, who had lived to have children and grandchildren, all because of immediate medical care on a beach in Normandy. "I don't know how many men I helped," Schneider said. "I know I couldn't help everyone. There were too many casualties, too much damage. But I know I helped some men. I know some men went home because I was there. That's what I think about when I remember Omaha Beach, not the chaos or the death, but the individual men I was able to help." The story of the American medics at Omaha Beach is largely forgotten by popular history. It is overshadowed by the stories of the combat troops, the men who charged inland and fought through the hedgerows and eventually liberated France. But without the medics, without those men willing to move through fire with nothing but a medical bag, many of those soldiers would not have survived to fight inland. Many would not have survived to liberate anything. The medics at Omaha Beach proved something fundamental about warfare. They proved that victory was not achieved by killing the enemy alone. Victory was achieved by preserving your own men, by giving them medical care that kept them alive, by understanding that the soldier who survives today is the soldier who can fight tomorrow. The Germans had medics too. German medics were just as brave, just as dedicated. But the American medical system, the American commitment to treating casualties quickly and moving them through a pipeline to increasingly sophisticated levels of care, proved to be superior to the German system. By the end of the war, the American Medical Corps had developed procedures and practices that set the standard for modern military medicine: triage, rapid evacuation, staged treatment. These concepts came from experience on beaches like Omaha. In the end, the story of the American medics at Omaha Beach is a story about ordinary men doing extraordinary things under extraordinary circumstances. It is a story about courage, not in the sense of charging the enemy or engaging in combat, but in the sense of showing up to help a wounded soldier when shells are landing and bullets are flying. It is a story about professionalism and dedication and the understanding that sometimes the most important thing a soldier can do is save the life of another soldier. And it is a story that deserves to be remembered, even if it has been largely forgotten by popular history.